back at it again. It's the State of Football here, Tuesday, November 10th, 2020, part 72. Your new home for real football talk in the mornings. We appreciate everybody along for the rodeo, the big show, the chat room people streaming live across NFLDraftBible.com, Twitter, Periscope, Facebook, Instagram. We can't stop. We won't stop. Oh, man. We've got jam-packed action ready for you today. Of course, around the league yesterday with Ralph Ventry. It was an NFL Monday morning roundtable discussion. Today's a Touchdown Tuesday as we kind of preview the college football action this upcoming weekend. We'll look back at the weekend that was, the Pac-12 return of the Pac. We'll also discuss, the new mock draft by Ryan Roberts up on NFLDraftBible.com. Later in the show, we'll try to have some fun with that. And boy, oh boy, wake up. I mean, geez. If it was rankings you guys wanted, just, holla at the kid, man. I got you covered. I mean, Jesus, we had a record-setting traffic day yesterday with the unveiling of the NFL Draft Bible midseason grades, and obviously there's a thirst for that out there with no really kind of reputable NFL draft website to lean on out there in the internet. So that's why we're relaunching the website, bringing back the daily content, bringing back all of our scouting reports online. So get on board with that. Use the promo code Familia50. It's a November to remember. You save 50%, gain access to the new premium website coming, get the hard copy of the NFL Draft Bible publication, get a copy of the book Scout Speak for free. It's a really jam-packed edition here today. So we're going to get underway. Of course, we'll be at the Hub, San Diego, broadcasting live on Friday. But for today, Tuesday, by the way, we announced Shane Ray will be in attendance. He is the second former number one pick to be in attendance out there, along with Matt Elam. We also just confirmed yesterday Brian Lewerke will be out there working out. So really some really good, talented players out at the Hub. Will be on location this weekend. Today, we're broadcasting live from the Jersey Shore at NFL Draft Bible headquarters. Ric Serritella here, along with Russ Lande in Chicago. Of course, the Calgary Stampeders, U.S. scouting director, longtime scout with the Cleveland Browns, St. Louis Rams, UCLA Bruins, the XFL, CFL, and we've got John Murphy down in New Orleans, VP of player personnel for the Toronto Argonauts, of course, Calgary Stampeders, Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Saskatchewan Roughriders, two Grey Cups. And we're bringing you the best, the biggest, the baddest, the best, banging you and bopping you over the head. And let's dive into it, fellas. It was another wild weekend in college football. The Fighting Irish with the big win, the Florida Gators with a big win, some leapfrogging and positioning there as teams try to maneuver into the college football playoff here. But some really intriguing prospects, and we have Russ Lande each and every Tuesday here on the State of Football, so we'll kick it off with him. Russ, what caught your attention this past weekend in the college football universe? And good morning, sir.
What's going on, brother? Two things caught my attention. I was watching Florida and enjoying them, seeing Kyle Trask, who I think is sort of an underrated guy in this year's draft. And every time I see Florida play this year, the kid Kadarius Toney jumps out. This is a kid that I look at and I say, man, how is this kid not getting more hype as a high-end NFL player? Not only does he have great hands and catch the ball, but you talk about a kid that does things in the open field, breaks tackles. I think he's the guy you're going to see go flying up draft boards, not getting much national attention now. But we know that NFL scouts aren't really talking to a lot of people in terms of giving that information out and talking about every prospect in the country. This is a kid, I think, when spring comes and workouts come and timing comes, I think the media is going to say, oh, this kid's a fast riser, when NFL people probably already have pretty high grades on him. I'd be stunned if he gets out of round 2, and I still think there's a chance he ends up in round 1. This kid's a really good football player. The other kid isn't a guy that's this year's draft. Just caught my attention, and I hate to say it because anybody that plays at USC, I want to say they're terrible because it's USC. But that kid, Drake London, the big receiver, you talk about kids making an impact. He plays on the basketball team, and he's on the football team. Had a big game. This kid showed you that there's a lot of traits that core receivers for tight ends that translate. His ability to catch, to use his body, to adjust off target balls, all those skills are there. Very impressive kid. And he's only a sophomore, so we're not talking about anybody that's draft eligible even this year. And even next year is probably better off, as I always say, wait unless you're going to be a first-round pick. But he was impressive. He showed a lot of things that you look for in receivers at the next level.
Yeah, that was that was probably the most exciting game I watched from start to finish. The USC Arizona State 9 a.m. local kickoff time. It was a treat for us on the East Coast. Drake London, big, tall, athletic, a red zone mismatch. He grabbed my eye as well. Of course, Keaton Slovis there at the end, showing us why there's some potential there. Squeezing that in tight windows, making some clutch throws. He's a cool cucumber as well. And Kadarius Toney, I agree with you, Russ. The only thing I disagree with is, could he be in the first round? In previous years, I would say he has a shot. I think we got to see how the underclassmen shake out. I was going to say, if you miss out on a Rondale Moore or a Jalen Waddle in round one, well, Kadarius Toney's not a bad consolation prize in round two. But to your point, he is a dark horse round one candidate. The way he's playing, the way he moves in open space, the elusiveness, the shiftiness, the rare.
I don't know if you see the same thing, but when I watch him, he almost looks like a running back because his lower body is sort of thick. He takes a lot of hits. He bounces off and makes it look easy. And I'm not saying he's a guy that's going to do everything. When I watch him, he fits in a lot of spots. And I look at the way NFL teams like moving guys around, like running backs going out in the flat, putting receivers in the backfield for certain snaps, like Antonio Brown was back there for Tampa Bay, and Cordarrelle Patterson pretty much is running back now with the Bears. I mean, this is a guy I could see lining up all over the place. Yeah, if you get in the first round, I don't know. But I'll tell you what, if I'm a team, the coach, creative, and knows how to use and move guys around, he would be a fun piece to have because you could line him up in so many spots.
Well, you look at how the Panthers are using Curtis Samuel. I could see Kadarius Toney having a role like that. And you see, they try to get him a lot of, quick slants or screens and just let him make plays in space, just get the ball in his hands. And here's a guy, much like Antonio Gibson, a Curtis Samuel, a guy who could play. I could have no problem lining up a Kadarius Toney all over the field. A couple of weeks ago, I think we compared him to a poor man's Percy Harvin. I'm not so sure he's a poor man's version anymore. He might be the real deal. John, any thoughts?
Yeah, and when you're making these type of plays against, game speed that you're going against, it's very easy for scouts to then see that transformation that you can do that at the next level, right? You're doing that against, as good of guys on a weekly basis, that you're going to be able to, play against. I also think, on the other side in that same game, that concussion that Kyle Pitts took, that was tough. That's a tough situation there. You'll be interesting to see, how quickly he kind of returns from that. And then also, kind of the news that the SEC this week is going to be in flux. You got Alabama, number 1 overall, may or may not be able to play their game. Auburn, Mississippi State already not playing their game. So, suddenly some of these, in terms of, coming down the stretch, and that you're not going to be able to, as a, whole, judge a 5-0, a 6-0, an 8-1. It's going to get real interesting there to see, how would a Texas A&M or a Florida that play their entire season potentially, and have 8, 9, 10 games on the list against a team that might go undefeated, but it may only be 6-0 or 7-0. So I think it's interesting there because you're seeing, kind of a lot of those top 10 teams right now are dealing with various issues when it comes to COVID, whether it's somebody in practice or, somebody at the university. So that's a difficult situation to think. LSU's already got a makeup game against Florida in December. The December games for LSU could be Florida and Alabama back-to-back, with both of those two teams needing those wins to solidify themselves in the Final Four. So you could have other teams being off for multiple weeks and Alabama still having a chance to get knocked out of the top 4 if they're playing 2 weeks after everyone else is done.
Yeah, the College Football Playoff Committee is going to have a tough process. But I mean, the way things stand right now, it's the exact college football playoff dream. You've got Alabama, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Clemson. Like they're saying, hey, let's just end the season right now. This is a ratings galore,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I mean,
Which, by the way, how do you move Notre Dame to 1 ahead of Clemson? They have to go to double overtime to beat a team with their backup back. That's literally like saying, okay, we're playing against the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers isn't playing, and we beat him in double overtime, and we're going to say that team's better than Green Bay. It's like, come on now. It's like that to me.
I hear
I bet you
got
half those voters didn't even know Lawrence didn't play.
You might be right about that. Maybe I'll take the over. Can I take the over? Ukulele, playing at a very high level, though, you have to say that he's definitely caught some attention there. If you want the entire risers, sliders, and surprises, we've got a great article that we do every Monday, Scouting the Nation, that we compile all of our scouting notes. Who are some of the guys there that they'll read up about this week, John?
So BYU doesn't only have one guy, that could make an impact in this year's draft. Also, their offensive tackle, Brady Christensen, a guy that has a very good opportunity. Now, not a lot of guys from BYU are out there declaring early, so this would be, something different for them, to have multiple guys, doing that. But he's a guy to keep a close eye on. Also, like what Carson Green has done, he's not going to be somebody you're going to see in the early part of the draft, but late round tackle, a guy that's really improved himself and his stock. And when you look, that's what Texas A&M is doing. What's helped turn the corner for them this season? At times it's been Kellen Mond, but what has it really been? The factor that run game has dominated for them, and him up front has been a major responsibility for that. And then a couple of guys that just catch your attention for the different things or different aspects of their game. You watch that Stanford game, that we talk about height, weight, speed. That Simi Fehoko is bringing that height, weight, speed to a whole other level. 6'4", 227. Now, they say they've had him in the 4.3s, which would be unbelievable, to see that. But even at a 4.4 anything, at 6'4", 227, also played football and basketball, was a highly recruited, player there to Stanford. He's a mature kid. He went on his LDS mission. You got to be careful when you're spelling that, because it brings a very different tone to the equation. If you text and say to somebody, he just came off a 2-year LDS mission, as opposed to typing a 2-year LSD mission. So make sure you're typing correctly what kind of mission you sent that kid on before you get him in trouble, right? But you hear Fehoko, and here's another Fehoko.
Right? Woodstock 2020.
Exactly. And you didn't miss much if you've been gone for 6 months of this. So you hear Fehoko, and here's another Fehoko, and even related to Alfred Papunu, who played in the NFL. So this kid's got a lot of cousins, a lot of relatives that have played sports, and he might be as good or better an athlete as any of them. As you saw on the, when the Chargers were in camp, you saw what kind of family, what kind of person and personality his cousin Brendan Fehoko had. So here's another Fehoko, Simi Fehoko, and he's averaging 23 plus yards per catch for his career out there at Stanford. And again, you're playing against high-level guys. You're making plays on the routine. And last week he jumps out again, averages close to 30 yards a catch. That's going to keep your attention if you're an NFL scout. I really liked what you saw out of the story about that Cornell Powell kid. When you watch him out there making plays against Notre Dame, he's eclipsed his total stats for his career in the past 2 weeks. So I mentioned, hey, if you know one thing after last weekend, it doubled down for sure again. I love that I picked the Irish to win and they won. Good for that. But the number one thing you saw out of last weekend, once again, is there is not a shadow of a doubt that Dabo Swinney is not the best coach in college football. I mean, the stuff he's able to do with those kids and keep them the way they were, more times than not, when you have what happens and your best guy fumbles and you give up a score, Then you give up another score late in the half, and you go down 23-10. And again, they weren't playing Boston College. They're playing at Notre Dame, right? More times than not, that game comes out as a 40-something to 20-something and just a disaster. And for them to, again, the second week in a row, minus your Mike linebacker, minus guys who were dropping like flies during that game, one of your rotational D linemen is suspended for the first half and then doesn't really get any action a whole lot. And for you to be taking these second and third teamers and they're in there making plays just shows you what kind of coaching staff, but how bought in those players are to what Clemson is offering them as a culture, as an opportunity to grow. And this kid goes out there and he's in his fifth year. And finally, in his fifth year, halfway through the season, they sit him down and say, hey, look, you've been asking for balls for your whole career. You've been asking for an opportunity. Where are you? What's the deal? Show up when we target you. He's got 17 catches the last 2 weeks for about 300 yards. And they get another guy that just comes out of nowhere and makes plays. So, yeah, I don't see him as a draftable kid. There's so many receivers available. But this is the type of kid, when you watch that type of performance and how you're playing with toughness, blocking, you could see a guy like that playing teams. That's an ideal number 6 or 7 receiver challenging to be on your special teams units at the next level. He's given him at least he's given himself a chance to get on the radar, as a PFA, and then we just mentioned some family, and I know Rick will love this one. Olakunle Fatukasi, little better than Turner would have said it, but that kid is now averaging 12.5 tackles a game.
Yeah, step your game up.
And Chiano and his group stick him in the middle, give him a little more responsibility. And what I like is his play is improved. Fogg's play next to him is improved. Avery Young is playing almost as well as any DB in the Big Ten at times. Suddenly that defense is not getting overwhelmed. And once again, that wasn't a win the other day. But you know what it wasn't? It wasn't what we have seen in the past 5+ years at Rutgers. Because when you come out and play like they did early, and you had some quarterback not great play, early in that game, and you have a turnover or two, but you play as hard as Rutgers played in the second half of that game, that's a really good sign for what's to come. And that defense played, I know they didn't stop them, but they played hard for 4 quarters, and they gave themselves at least a chance to come out in the second half and probably do what they were asked, which was, let's win the second half. And what did Rutgers go out and do? Rutgers won the second half, not handily, but they won the second half when you watch how they played from the start of the game to the end of the game. Rutgers improved in a lot of areas and are going to give a lot of teams a run for their money week to week, which is the first sign of improvement and culture at Rutgers, is that they're playing these teams hard on a weekly basis. And it's no longer just a gimme W if you're playing Rutgers. And I think he's put himself in the picture, it's the latest 7th round, but he's given himself a shot. It all depends. He doesn't have ideal size, right? 6 foot, 234, maybe a high 4'6", mid 4'7" type guy, but definitely a kid who could be a high compete guy in training camp next year. And you saw his brother Foley get the start last night in place of Quinn Williams. So he has that pedigree thing going for him there. So a lot of Futoski's getting opportunities on the field in New Jersey.
Yeah, and suddenly, the Rutgers looking at that schedule, whereas they thought coming into the season, Michigan would be the tough game coming up, but now suddenly they have got Indiana's the tough matchup. They've got Michigan, Penn State, and Indiana. Who would have thunk Indiana's the team that they're worried about? And if you're Michigan and Penn State now, you're kind of nervous, right? Because Rutgers, who is traditionally known to be a laughing stock under Chris Ash, now suddenly they're going to come and give you a game. And nobody wants to be that team that loses to Rutgers, boy. We'll have your fist pumping here at the Jersey Shore. Hey, it's the State of Football here, weekdays, 9:30 a.m. Eastern. Ric Serritella, Russ Lande, John Murphy breaking it down. Shout out to all our chat room listeners. Shout out to all our first-time listeners. Sippy Sports Show, we appreciate you tuning in. A Southern Miss fan, I see. Frank Gore Jr. just making a debut on the NFL Draft Bible Big Board. Yes, only a freshman, but he is on the board. And, he has a question here coming in the chat room about the Southern Miss coach. I'll get to that in a second. But to answer the other question, is the Cincinnati quarterback going to make a good pro? Desmond Ridder, we talked about him on the tailgate show on Saturday. I think he could potentially declare, because he's kind of, we kind of view him as a plateaued prospect, right? Like, he kind of is what he is. He's a dual threat passer. He's probably a backup at best. And so I would strike while the iron's hot. Cincinnati's making a run at this college football playoffs. The program is ascending, and should they get in the playoffs, I say, hey, Desmond Ridder, strike while the iron's hot, because your draft stock will never be higher. And again, it maxes out probably round 5, and that's what you're going to get. Developmental guy, he'll get a chance to prove himself, and sure, he'll get an opportunity. I just don't think you're talking about a top 100 selection or a starter at the next level. Who will be the next Southern Miss coach? Honestly, I'm not an expert at this. I know the Tulane coordinator has been mentioned. I would think the Coastal Carolina head coach is going to have an opportunity here. John, any intel on Southern Miss, who they could potentially look at for a head coach?
Yeah, I wouldn't be quite sure that you would think that leaving Coastal Carolina, especially where they're located, would be an upgrade to go to Southern Miss. I got you a dark horse, though. Liberty's offensive coordinator is Kent Austin.
Or how about Liberty's head coach?
I don't know if I would say going to Southern Miss from Liberty would be an upgrade for Hugh Freeze.
I think Freeze is looking for a Power 5 job.
I think he is.
I think you know what? You're like, if you want to look at Freeze now, I know Vanderbilt would probably have some boosters and others that would be frightened, to do something like that. But that would be a home run, thing to look at, a Power 5 team that's been down.
How about
and then would take a shot, right, with a guy like that who can recruit and he's able to coach. I mean, and he has those two things. But Ken Austin, who's from the area, coached at Ole Miss, brings an offense with him that's exciting. And now one thing Southern Miss can get, they can get a ton of athletes, and they're not JUCO shy. So that's a university that's been, kind of fluctuating and kind of floundering there, now for a while. But you've seen, if you're those teams, look no further than how Tulane's turned around, and they're playing good football, and they're in the games that they lose, right? And some of this has got to be measuring where you can really get to. And at Southern Miss, you can get to 8-3. You can get to like 18-25. Just don't be asking for top 10 and thinking you can get there unless something drastic happens and you just get a recruit that's, a 2-star that turns into a 5-star quarterback is your only way to go undefeated one year and do something like that, right? But I think that there's a lot of guys in the South. When you look at how well Nicholls State's played, when you look how well ULL is playing, right now, there's plenty of good coaches around the area that you could look at. And then there's guys that are program changers in the sense of where they're coming from, the culture and the success that they've had somewhere else. And you add that with the vast amount of recruiting that you can do when you're at Southern Miss, between Mississippi, Louisiana, over there to Georgia, and the Florida kids, that triangle or that group of guys that you can recruit from, there's no reason why that's not a good-looking job to somebody that's on one of those staffs to jump over to. I'm just not sure. That Myrtle Beach, that's a hell of a good-looking campus when you look at where Coastal Carolina is at. And the one thing you have at Liberty, you have a lot of resources. I mean, go do some research. You're now at Liberty, and you've turned Liberty into a sports semi-powerhouse even for 1 year. They have a lot of resources to put behind that program, there to keep you, very happy, until a Power 5 team comes along. But if you're Hugh Freeze, you'd probably love nothing else but to try to find a way to get into an SEC team, and have a little revenge tour going on. But, like I said, would Vanderbilt behind the scenes ever pull the plug and go after a guy like that? Because it's the total opposite. You have a very clean program with a really good head coach, but they're just not getting it done on the field. Would you give a guy a second chance who's a proven guy who can get 10 wins in the SEC? Would be real interesting to see.
Hey, he's the last head coach now in the SEC to win back-to-back seasons against Nick Saban. So that's got to be appealing, especially to somebody like Vanderbilt. Hey, they need something to get it going in the right direction. We've got you going in the right direction here on the State of Football. Shout out to Sippy Sports Show. Go give his show a listen. We do appreciate the questions and the follow and the support, the love. NFLDraftBible.com. Familia 50. If you're not a disciple of the NFL Draft Bible, go there now. Unlock the magic, gain instant access to over 300 scouting reports and our virtual draft guide. We also have updated big board rankings. We've got 1,000 players ranked on the big board there. Also, it's valid for Friday Night Scout School coming up this Friday with David Turner, Ryan Roberts, Baldy's Breakdowns. We got Brian Baldinger breaking down some seminars there as well. So, hey, it's a November to remember. Use our promo code Familia50. Brand new website coming up for the draft season. We are going to deliver in a big way. I'm telling you, I look around, there's no NFL draft websites out there. And so, I said, hey, we've got to do something about this. No one really kind of picked up the slack after Draft Scout became disabandoned. And now I see, the Draft Network, the Target CEO, I guess, ran out of money there to continue to fund that operation. The CEO stepped down at the Draft Network. So there's really no quality NFL draft websites. Well, hey, the only one you need in your life, as Russ Lande will say, the only Bible that matters, the NFL Draft Bible, baby. It's where it's at. Make sure you log on, become a disciple, support the cause. Hey, since 2002, it's what we do. And this weekend is what we do, keeping the Scouts' eye on the television screen. Not a lot of traveling this season, so we're kind of stuck in the rut here. That's why we join you each and every weekday, 9 a.m. Eastern. But, Russ, you heard John say the COVID now is kind of creeping in. We saw it kind of kill some games off in the Pac-12. It's obviously been a big issue in the Big Ten. Now the SEC has some issues kind of lurking on the COVID, and we'll see what the shakeout is from that Notre Dame scene. I mean, what a wild scene. With the fans rushing the field. We'll see, what comes of it. But what are the big storylines or matchups or prospects that you want to highlight here on the upcoming college football weekend?
Well, one of them we sort of hit on already. I want to take a peek at that Cincinnati quarterback, see how he does this week. They're playing East Carolina on Friday. So if you're going to watch a game that's not on the big day, it's a great game. Take a peek at this kid. I've heard scouts texting me about him saying if you want to take a look at a kid for next year, they said they'd be shocked if he comes out because he is not a guy that's considered a high-end guy, but a guy take a peek at. And to me, I really want to watch Virginia-Louisville. To me, there are two interesting guys in Virginia. There's a corner named Nick Grant, number 1, athletic kid. I want to see how well he plays because when I've watched him play before, he looks really good, but he's not a real tester. He's timed in the 4.6s, 4.7s. I want to see how does he play? Can he cover fast guys? Because what I've seen of him, he looks faster than that. He's a long kid. He's 6 foot plus, long arms, long legs, natural instincts. Want to see how he plays. They have a defensive end, Richard Burney, number 16. You watch this kid. They play more of a 30-34 defense, and this kid plays more of an end. He's sort of a power guy, but he's an interesting player. He seems to have a good feel for his hand use, seems to know what he's doing technique-wise. Want to see how he does against Louisville, see how he plays against better competition. Looking forward to watching those two guys in that game.
All right, some good names to note there. And, hey, when you play Louisville, one thing you're going to be tested against speed, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they got speed all over the field, from the wideouts to the running back there, Joystick. I mean, he's one of the more exciting players to watch, I think, in college football, the running back there at Louisville. All right, John, where are you going this upcoming weekend with your Baton Rouge boys probably on the bye this week due to the COVID? Where are you going to be watching?
Yeah, that's the one thing. They can't defeat the COVID, but they can really not defeat the Crimson Tide. So I'll take my chances versus the COVID this weekend rather than playing Alabama. So, But a lot of interesting games because a little revenge tour, going around, college football. Notre Dame coming off that win. Just remember the last time Notre Dame beat a number 1 team at home 27 years ago, beating Florida State. And what did they do the next week? Lose to Boston College. What do they have this week? Boston College. And Phil, if Ryan Roberts isn't there holding his hand, it'll only be because we got him, on duty this weekend, but he might be on upset alert. I'm hoping they're not on upset alert, but Phil Dracovic is definitely going to be standing there, and he won't be waiting by the bus to congratulate them. He might be shooting them the one-finger salute, and then we'll see how he plays in the game. But that's a chance for Boston College. You saw what Clemson was able to do. If you can block them up front, you might be able to take some big shots down the field. So that game should always be a lot closer, than a ranking. Doesn't really matter between Notre Dame and Boston College. It's a very underrated rivalry, but an intense one, especially on the Boston College side, of things. So there's one game where there's a little revenge tour. Texas A&M, this is a sneaky game going into Tennessee. I don't think this is going to be as easy a just, cakewalk type of game for them against Tennessee. Now, Tennessee has to find a way to get some sort of offense consistency going in order to win the game. But can it be a more interesting, 4-quarter game and not just a runaway, for A&M? We'll keep learning our lesson every week about A&M. Like I said, last week they were able to use the run, use that play action. Their tight end is coming out week after week, making plays for them. This is another big opportunity for them to go in on the road at Tennessee, which is still a difficult place to win games, and keep yourself in the mix to being a team that could sneak in. If someone loses, A&M is going to be a team, right there. Them in Florida are going to be that next in line, if somebody slides down a notch. And then going kind of a little further out, we get to see Grant Gunnell, who played very well down the stretch for Arizona. What does he do in his first game? It'll be interesting to see what they learned, from USC playing. Arizona off, last week, and now Arizona gets a chance to get on the field for the first time. Their season probably goes how he goes, as down the stretch last year. He was a pretty impressive-looking quarterback, has good pro size, and somebody will be interesting to see how he continues to play this year off of how well he played down the stretch, completing nearly 70% down the stretch last year. He's a guy that has some interesting things to show you. And then the last two is, again, we mentioned it, Felipe Franks taking a unbelievably 500 Arkansas team into Florida.
Amazing.
And so now, here you go. You wanted Kyle Trask, and you wanted Kyle Trask so bad that you pushed me out all the way to going out there. Well, we're going to see what happens, in that situation. So Alabama, Arkansas has done some good things against everybody except for Alabama in all reality. But at 3-3, can they give Florida a game like they've given others a game and they've stayed in it longer than maybe they should? And then the last one is, I don't think anybody could have expected that the third or fourth week into the Big Ten season that we would have a game to keep you in line for a shot at first place, and it's between Purdue and Northwestern. Unbelievably, both undefeated, and Northwestern has gotten better production offensively using the Indiana transfer quarterback. Yeah, Purdue has a chance offensively to do some things, and if they come out of that mix, that's what you're going to have to see it come from, is Purdue offensively has a chance to score some points. Northwestern has kept teams kind of at a minimum and not given up a lot of big plays defensively. So which one of those two scenarios kind of takes precedent here? Northwestern playing as well as they have defensively, getting enough run play action there to make their quarterback be able to be a really good game manager for them. And on the Purdue side, you have your weapons. You have a chance here to go 3-0, which we would have to do some research to see the last time Purdue was 3-0. But both programs have put themselves in a good spot here, considering they're dodging the bullets of how these other teams, that were thought of to have big years are not clearly having that. And then I guess it looks like Wisconsin is on the road back to playing So we'll see what happens there. And who's at quarterback for Wisconsin when they do return to the field? Do they go back to the senior, or do they go back to the young kid, Metz, who played as good as anybody, in a week one performance for himself? What did he go? Had one incompletion, and 4 touchdowns. So which way does Wisconsin kind of go once they get themselves back on the field?
Put the Mets kid in and don't think twice about it. Buckle up and see what the young buck has got. That's my take there. A lot of quarterback chatter, and I'm curious. I'm going to get Russ Lande to weigh in. But, you mentioned Purdue. Jeff Brom, I think, has done a brilliant job recruiting there. The Northwestern defense. Patty Fisher gets a lot of the attention, but Blake Gallagher having himself a hell of a year. And, I will say this, the Felipe Franks, I have a hard time coming around, as a next level guy. But that's an intriguing matchup between, his former team and Kyle Trask. And I will say too, that the Jerkovic flute, he the way Notre Dame is playing, if Boston College were to upset Notre Dame, Phil Jerkovic, put him right in the next to Doug Flutie. I mean, that would be a historic win, a monumental win. But, Russ, I don't know how much you've dug into the quarterback class. The senior crop is really a tough case study for me because you have Kellen Mond, who's ascending, that John mentioned, the Aggies. You've got Kyle Trask, who's playing as good as anybody in the country. You've got Jamie Newman, who just accepted a Senior Bowl invite, where, there's people out there that might state a case for any one of those 3 guys. Is there a consensus guy yet? Do you lean towards anybody? How do you kind of see the top of the senior crop here?
I don't think there's a consensus right now. I think part of that is the Newman kid not playing this year. So people are going to want to see him live, see that he's in shape. I think a lot of teams liked what they saw on film at Wake. I will tell you, I think a lot of people are on the Trask bandwagon and think he's not getting a fair shake to be in consideration to be one of the top quarterbacks. I've heard some scouts say that don't be shocked if this guy hurdles over a number of guys and is in competition to be the first or second quarterback drafted. So he's going to be drafted, I think, a lot higher than people are talking about. And just on a total side note, the funny thing to me is for all the people online, and I'm not including you guys and myself because I think we take the time, we do the work, that are proclaiming the Jets are 100% doing everything they can to get Trevor Lawrence. I'd love to know how many have actually pulled out and gotten access to Clemson game film and watched Trevor Lawrence. Or if they're just saying, yeah, I saw him play 6 times on a Saturday night and he's really good, so he's the guy. I doubt very many of these people that are throwing out these comments, wherever they may be, have actually watched the film. And I'm not knocking Lawrence. He's a tremendous prospect and a no doubt first-round player. But I just think it's funny how many people will comment and they haven't even studied the film or evaluated his strengths and weaknesses.
So should the Jets take Trevor Lawrence?
I haven't finished all the quarterbacks yet. I'm only 4 deep. So I got about probably 15 more before I can make an educated decision. Is he a first-round quarterback? No question. He does a lot of things well, but there are some things that you have to wonder, is he going to be better at? And part of that's whenever you play quarterback for a team that is so much better than everybody else, he rarely has to go beyond his first read. He rarely sits in the pocket and goes through his progression and doesn't always seem as comfortable when he does. So that's one of the things you have to figure out because he's on a team that's so much better than everybody else. How is he going to handle when he has to go to third, fourth, and checkdowns and stuff like that? On a side note, let's remember, BC didn't beat Clemson, but they almost did the week before. So it's not like Notre Dame's going up against a team that's not a good team. I wouldn't be shocked if BC wins this game.
Yeah, it wouldn't be shocking at all. Definitely going to be a good, fun weekend of college football action once again. And, the Trevor Lawrence debate is a perfect segue to our final segment here. Ryan Roberts, our director of scouting here at the NFL Draft Bible, just released his first mock draft of the season for us. And guess who's up at top? That man, Trevor Lawrence. And what is interesting here is somehow, some way, I guess with the Jets acquiring a first-round pick from Seattle, he actually has the Jets going Lawrence at 1, coming back at the end of the first round and taking Travis Etienne. I'm not a big fan of Etienne in round one, but when you take that backfield combination, how do you think a backfield like that would fare at the next level, John? It definitely would change the dynamics of your offense a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you see if you're going in that direction and you're going to say like, hey, we're going to try this again, well, then the two things you better do is, one, you better know what you're asking that guy to do when you bring him in the building, like Russ said. What are you doing and what are you changing in this element to say, what did we do wrong? If we didn't think the drafting of Sam Darnold was incorrect, what did we do wrong with what we thought he could do for us and now what we did not put around him? So if that's the case and you double down and you go in the direction of drafting another quarterback, and per se here it's Trevor Lawrence, then coming back and saying, okay, we have a left tackle. We think we might have one or two pieces of our O-line, there's still work to be done with free agency or, having a competent, kind of full offensive line there. Okay, one of Perryman or Crowder being back. You like what you're seeing out of Mims as he progresses. Maybe the Berrios kid can be a slot and you kind of like one tight end. Well, then, yeah, if you double down and brought in what you consider to be the best running back in the draft and somebody who can run, catch, block most of the time, and give you an every down back, now you're taking some of that off of the starting quarterback. You're starting to give him some of the things that you see you did not give Darnold. And now that, you probably have a better chance of making headway there, but you can't just go into this head first saying we have the number one pick. We haven't gotten the most out of Darnold. Yeah, the best idea is just go draft a quarterback number one. You better have, as a franchise, taken a look and said, hey, we thought what we saw out of Gase was the reason to bring him, to pair him with Darnold. How did that whole thing in that period of time come crashing down to the point where when Darnold's playing with the same guys, and last night Shane Falco's out there playing with them, and he's producing? Be honest. That's as good as the Jets have looked offensively under Gase, and you're playing with Gore, P. Ryan, and Ty Johnson. Okay, you got the receivers healthy, and there's Perryman playing well. But you know what makes Perryman play well? Getting him the damn ball.
Yeah.
So, so here's Flacco at 33 or 32.
Coming off neck injury.
Right, and literally coming off the bench, and he's played better most of the time.
Yeah, no doubt. That was the best quarterback play that was played by either New York team. Well, any Jersey team anyway.
But here's the question. Do you think that's realistic? Lawrence and Etienne, unless Dabo is the head coach GM.
Well,
because realistically, Lawrence, yeah, but at the end of the first round on a rebuilding team, are you going to take a running back with so many holes, so many problems? I just think that maybe if Dabo's there, yeah, he's going to want to bring, as most college coaches do, their guys. But I just wonder if that's realistic.
You know who I blame for this? The guy who wanted some clickbait, and he got it. Ryan Roberts.
Yeah, right.
Ryan Roberts giving us fake news. That's who I blame for this. He got Russ to talk about it.
Well,
he got Russ to talk about running backs in the first round, just like he wanted. He got clickbait material from Ryan Roberts.
Absolutely.
That's what I blame for this. No, to me, no. It makes it's good. All joking aside, it's good, right? Like a Clemson guy in the first pick, Clemson guy at the last pick. It all fun and games aside, but you would have to say that they have no pass rush. They don't have a real cover guy, to write home about.
They got nothing.
And if you had a tackle, right? Like we're talking about the younger offensive tackles.
Mekhi Becton is the only guy on that roster that you can actually.
Yeah, if you bookended Becton with a guy, if you there's people to make a move for, with that pick there. And the other thing is, again, not to nitpick or go too deep when it's November 10th. The difference between a first round pick and those other rounds, that extra year of ownership is not as important on a running back as it is a pass rusher, a cover guy, or an offensive tackle. So I would say those would be the three, areas. So if you want to double down and give them another Clemson guy at the end of the first round, okay. But, to me, I would think at where they're at, you have an opportunity there. And the other thing you have an opportunity for, and again, it's way too early, is if you wanted at the end, you probably could make a deal with somebody who's in the top 5 picks in round 2 and allow them to come up and you to slide down and go get that, go get the running back in the top 5 picks of round 2 and have somebody at the, the end of day 1 or end of round 1. There's probably a very anxious suitor for one of those players. And the real reason is that extra year, right? Because you always hear when you get to about pick 25, if there's another quarterback on the, kind of on the docket that could go anywhere in the next 10 or 20 picks, you always hear teams mention, hey, so-and-so could trade up, to get into the end of the first round to take a quarterback. Why? They want that extra year of control. But fundamentally it makes sense to say, like, if I'm the Jets, you better get the next guy, not only a better O-line, but a better comprehension of the offense, because that's where you look at last night. And if you want to pause for just a moment, I'm not saying pause for too long if you're Joe Douglas, but when you watch that last night, and the Patriots still have a little defense left, not a lot because there's no Gilmore out there, but you had both McCourties, right? J.C. Jackson is playing. Most of their front line is playing outside of Lawrence Guy. That wasn't a terrible defensive unit on the field last night. And you put up 27 points, and you played as good an offense of football as you've played under Gase.
Well, that was under Flacco. I think Flacco just said, hey.
Behind the scenes is Adam Gase saying, hey, I might not be as good a coach as what I look like when I got here. But when you watch last night, do you start wondering how good is Darnold, right? Like, is there a pause to start wondering what exactly is it that Darnold isn't bringing to the table, as much as saying, I've already written the story, possibly in all likelihood, of Adam Gase. But it would make me pause for a moment and reevaluate all of Darnold's film again before I just run off and stick with Darnold and blame it all on Gase and his staff.
I haven't seen it from Darnold. I've seen some flash throws, but I haven't seen that flash game. And I get it. The Jets are a terrible team. But you see, like, what Joe Burrow is doing, like what Justin Herbert is doing, even though they're not winning, you're saying, wow, this guy is going to be a superstar. I haven't seen a game like that where I said, oh, man, that guy's so freaking good. There
have been stretches, 1 or 2 series here and there, but not complete things. And the scary thing is those 1 or 2 series get you thinking what could be. Could this be a guy that's like Tannehill if he gets a good coach and is in the right situation?
Well, that's an interesting comparison, Russ, because we saw Tannehill, once he left the reins of Adam Gase, he became a superstar. And I thought it was a little telling for Adam Schefter to be so confident, like on the pregame or the halftime show. He's like, oh, Adam Gase will not be back. That's like that's a lock. I mean, just to be so confident about it. Man, and I'll say the other thing is this. What you saw last night was Joe Flacco might be the quarterback that comes back next season, right? Because if they do go quarterback number 1, they're going to flip Darnold for whatever they can take, which, quite frankly, I don't know if you're getting anything other than a day 3 pick at this point. But once they go quarterback and the cat is out of the hat there, I think Darnold's value even decreases. But what you've seen is, hey, at the very least, if we do draft another quarterback, we can at least bring back Joe Flacco to be that security, backup, hold the fort guy if we have to. And, I see DC join us in the chat room. Gase is god awful. And at the end of the day, Gase is going to Gase. The Jets are going to Jets. And it is a jest. And so it's been another hour of power. I guess we'll wrap it up. I was going to say the other team that had 2 first-round picks in the Ryan Roberts mock was Jacksonville. And he went offense for those guys as well. Justin Fields and Baby Gronk. The Big Ten connection, Pete Fryermuth and Justin Fields in his mock draft. So go to NFLDraftBible.com. We'll go to Russell Lande for parting shots. Anything on the mock, on the Jets Patriots last night, sports management worldwide, football GM and scouting course. What do you want to talk about here, Russ?
Just 2 things. I mean, everybody's talking about Trey Lance and Zach Wilson and Trask and Newman Ark getting a lot of credit. I would put money that Wilson or Lance, one of them is going to slot. One of them's not going to be a first rounder because there's going to be some seniors that get pushed up. And I got to tell you, I'm 4 games into doing Florida and grading all their offense. I honestly believe that if Pitts' concussion is not a big deal, he will challenge to be the first non-quarterback drafted. This kid is not just a good tight end. He's the best one I've seen in 10 years.
Wow.
He is so athletic, so dynamic in his movement skills, his ball skills, his ability to – a lot of tight ends can make the highlight catch up top, but they can't get down because they don't have the flexibility. They can't catch balls behind them. He makes it look easy adjusting to balls that are not thrown perfectly, especially in Florida's offense. They do a lot of back shoulder stuff, which is rare with a tight end. This kid makes it look simple. He's really special. I think he's going to challenge to be the first non-quarterback drafted, which is, trust me, it's hard to take a tight end over a pass rush or a corner, but I think this kid's got a chance to be really, really high in the draft.
I love it. Nothing better than finishing up the show with a hot take. You heard the man, Russell Lande. He just anointed Kyle Pitts a top 10 pick, ladies and gentlemen. Put it in the books. November 10th.
That concussion ain't much. I think it's legitimate.
November 10th. Put it in the book. 6 months away. We'll go back to the archives as we get closer to April. Of course, John Murphy's with me here each and every weekday, 9 a.m. Eastern. We'll be broadcasting live out in San Diego at the Hub Football Camp on Friday. And we'll be back tomorrow. I've got to check the schedule and see who our guests are, but we'll be back at it again talking football. Another hour of power in the books, John, episode 72. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I think the thing that as we get to those post-season NFL and you start looking at the mock drafts and you start seeing, okay, hey, the Jets and what picks do they have and, Jacksonville and what they may have, boy, I still believe that the thing that's going to really come, especially if you're a Jets fan or you're a Bills fan or you're a Patriots fan that's going to keep cycling around in your head is you're in a lot of trouble because there's a team that's now 5-3 on a 4-game winning streak who may look like they have their franchise quarterback, and they have their own pick. They have a top 5 pick right now in Houston's, and they have Houston's top 5 pick in the second round. So the Miami Dolphins are 5-3, 1 game out of first, already have their franchise quarterback, already drafted 4 or 5 guys last year that are already making an impact on their roster, and have 2 1s and 2 2s. So that's a team to me that is very, very dangerous when you start looking at how they could finish things off this year. And then normally you were saying the same thing about the Patriots. In their heyday, you were saying the same thing about the Cowboys. How did they just win the division and have all these extra picks? And you've seen the really good teams, right? This is how Trent Baalke built the 49ers teams. Seattle has done this the right way. We mentioned the Patriots. You've seen the Baltimore Ravens do it. If Miami keeps on their track, this becomes a really interesting division in a hurry because depending on who the Jets pick as their new head coach or what they do there, and you have the number 1 pick and a lot of extra picks. And you have the Patriots with what's happening this year with them. And you have the Bills on the come. the AFC East suddenly goes from being a one-team deal like it has been to being at least a two-team deal with the Jets and Patriots now. Yeah, this draft becomes super important to you as the Jets because two other teams have already found their franchise quarterback in your own division. And the Patriots, well, you're going to trust, like I said, if COVID hits both teams and it's Joe Douglas against Bill Belichick at the draft, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. So if you're the Jets, you're not only picking number one here, but you're saying like, hey, this is a huge scenario that we're either figuring it out this time or we're 3 years into the next guy and we're in dead last because these other teams are really out in front right now, right?
Now,
Buffalo and potentially Miami are significantly out in front of where the other teams are at in a lot of places, but especially their own division, because you come back from being as competitive as you are and to then have that much draft capital, man, in today's NFL, with the talk about the salary cap and how much it could be reduced in the next 2 to 3 years.
Sure.
If you're the Dolphins and you're handling that much high-end talent out of the draft that's all under contract and affordable, you have a really good shot of becoming really dangerous because you know what? It's not hard to sell Miami to free agents.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think, you know, the new formula for winning in the NFL is find yourself a good young quarterback, win on that rookie deal because you can afford to sign other players. I forgot the Dolphins were the other team with 2 first-round picks. Jamar Chase and Nick Bolton were the 2 guys going in the mock. Boy, oh boy, what a nice injection of youth that would be. But you're right. It's a defining, you know, a franchise-defining moment, whether they opt to stick with Darnold or choose to go in another direction. If they don't get this quarterback situation right, it's going to be another decade.
Well, Jacksonville and Cleveland. I mean, how long have they been chasing to find a quarterback? And it's the whole reason.
Well, look at the Dolphins since Dan Marino. They just finally now got one.
And if you don't have one, you better be drafting one every year. Even if it's not first round, every year, because you hope to find somebody who can at least be okay to get you a winning record. Because otherwise you become trapped in that Jacksonville situation, and it's ugly.
Yeah, and Jacksonville, I think, is estimated to have $100 million in salary cap space next season. But who wants to go play for that franchise?
Well, if that owner doesn't realize that the same people have been running it, making decisions, and driving it into the ground, and he still lets them stay and use that $100 million next year, then you can't really expect anything different. It's just going to be the same thing over and over.
Well, and it's actually the devil in disguise to have all that cap space, because when you have all that money and you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, you've got to now overpay guys to come play there. You've got to overspend to get mediocre talent. I think building through free agency is the absolute worst way to build an NFL team. The smart teams will retain their own players that they've developed within their system, that know their schemes, and extend them a year before they hit the free agency. Keep the players that are worth keeping. That's worth spending the money on.
What they should be spending the money on is making trades like whatever team it was with Brock Osweiler. Take a player with a bad contract and get a high pick. And give that nothing and eat that. Do that for 2 or 3 veterans.
Yeah, you're right. That was sure.
Why not get 3 or 4 picks for that $100 million? And you're not winning it next year.
Yeah.
No chance they're winning the Super Bowl next year. So why not get some good young players?
Well, we shall see. It was a fun episode. If you're just tuning in on the tail end, we recapped the new mock draft on NFLDraftBible.com. We talked about the college football weekend that was. We looked ahead at the college football weekend that will be. And, of course, it's brought to you by the NFLDraftBible.com. Make sure you go all access, become a disciple today, Familia 50. Go ahead, Russ. Take it away. And, hey, we've been preaching the good gospel of the NFL Draft Bible since 2002. It's what we do. Our 19th year of independent draft coverage. Again, new website on the way. Take advantage of that November to Remember promo deal that we have. You'll save 50%. You'll get the hard copy publication. You'll get a Scout Speak hard copy publication. You'll gain access to all our insider premium content. And by the way, Friday, tune in. We'll be broadcasting from sunny San Diego, baby, at the Hub Football Camp. Shane Ray, Matt Elam, Brian Lewerke, all confirmed. Devin Ross just cut from the Patriots a couple weeks ago. A lot of very good, talented players. We'll be providing live coverage and updates throughout the weekend there. All right. For our guest panel today, we had Russ Lande, of course, in Chicago joining us, the Calgary Stampeders, Director of U.S. Scouting, John Murphy down in New Orleans, the Toronto Argonauts, VP of Player Personnel, and y'all know me, RIC, and the place to be. Ric Serritella